How, I know you had written for Fridays and SNL before the
Seinfeld.
creation of Seinfeld, but how prepared did you feel when your pal Jerry called and said, they want me to develop this thing, do you want to create the show with me? And how much writing in that milieu had you done?
Next to nothing.
Right.
Yeah.
And so,
because I just wrote sketches
Right.
for those shows that you mentioned, and no, I did not know how to write a half-hour show.
so did it seem like an instant challenge in terms of
Oh yeah.
exciting?
No.
Or dreading?
No, dreading. Yeah, as I dreaded everything.
Sure.
Yeah. No, I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea what the form was. I had no idea how many pages I had to write. The whole thing was a mystery to me.
Did you in fact say to him, and I'm asking, not quoting any other interviews, but did you, I always wondered if you said to him, why are you bugging me with this?
Well, he had read a screenplay.
Okay.
First of all, we were friends.
You were very great friends.
We were friends, and he liked my stand-up. And he also read a screenplay that I had written, which he liked a lot.
Yeah.
So.
Well, no, I don't question the ability.
No, I'm saying that's why he asked me.
Sure.
Is your question?
Once you were brought in,
Once I was brought in,
and you were saying,
did
why?
I say to him, I don't really know what I'm doing?
Why are you bothering me? I don't know how to do any of this. The sitcom format.
I'm sure I said that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes, something along those lines.
Yeah.
And how long did you guys kick it around? Because I remember it was really the late night people, Ludlum maybe, who was crazy.
Rick.
Yeah, something like Ludlum.
Ludwin. Yeah.
Was crazy about him, his late night, there was the Tonight Show and all that stuff, and they didn't really know what the hell to do. And I never knew how long you guys kicked around an idea before you pitched the so-called show about nothing.
Not very long at all.
A couple of days?
Not even. I think.
Really?
I just think we went to this Westway diner.
Uh-huh.
And just had a cup of coffee.
Uh-huh.
And that was it.
What do you think, 4 friends, 3 friends?
No, there was nothing to it. Nothing to it.
Right.
So
how prepared?
No, the idea was basically how does, it'll be about you.
Right.
You're a stand-up. Mm-hmm. Where do you get your material from? How do you get your material? What is your life like that you're able to carve these routines? Where do these routines come from? So, for example, we'll go to a dry cleaner, and you'll have an incident in a dry cleaner, and then at the end of the show, you'll do a stand-up bit about it.
Right.
And that was the initial idea.
Right.
You'll go on a date, so at the end you'll do a routine about the dry cleaner and the date.
Sure.
Right. So that seemed like a decent idea, and you'll have a friend,
right?
Because you have to talk to somebody.
Most people do.
And then you'll have an ex-girlfriend, and you'll have an idiot neighbor. I better not say idiot neighbor because it was based on my neighbor, and he's not an idiot. The real guy.
Yeah, sure.
The guy in the show was, I think, somewhat of a nut. Yeah.
Yeah, needless to say.
A hipster doofus, if you will.
Yeah, hipster doofus. Okay.
They were loosely based on someone, or at least taking their names and so on.
So, that's pretty much what was pitched.
Right. Which, by the way, is a lot less romanticized as it's been throughout history that a show about nothing was pitched, because that isn't a show about nothing. That's how a stand-up puts together his act. That's how a stand-up lives his life, which we hadn't really seen.
Yeah, but I think the idea was that it would not be a heavy story show.
Right.
That we wouldn't have to know what's going to happen next. It would be more of a meandering thing and most of the humor would just be tangential.
Sure.
That grew out of discussions, because we went to this grocery store, this Korean grocery store, and this is before we even got the idea of the show.
Right.
And we were in the grocery store. This is when he first proposed the idea, and we went to the grocery store. We were going to share a cab back to the West Side, and we just started talking about the cereal brands and everything in the store. And I actually said, this is the show. This is the kind of dialogue that we should have on the show.
Right.
Because this is the kind of dialogue that we never heard.
Right.
So, once the actual writing started to kick off, and I realized that this is not going to work.
Because
Because
wasn't compelling enough?
it wasn't compelling enough.
Right.
That
Wasn't story driven.
that you needed stories.
Right.
And so I did a complete 180 on it, where I became completely obsessed with stories, writing stories.
And interweaving.
How do you write a story? The interweaving, that came about because there were 4 characters.
Right.
And I noticed that there could be some moping early on. There could be some moping on the set
If people weren't,
if people did not have
Sure.
a sufficient amount to do.
it's organic.
And I thought, I don't want anybody moping.
Right.
I don't like that. And then I started to write 3 or 4 stories
Right.
and getting the story. And then even at the beginning, before we even started, I would think about, well, how can that hook up with this thing?
Yeah.
And that's sort of how that started.
Well, it becomes the magic of the show, and it's interesting because Andy Scheinman from the Castle Rock
Yeah.
played in the poker game a couple of weeks ago, and someone was asking him about the show because the Castle Rock was involved, and he was saying it took 3 seasons maybe, or 3 years to get a full season out of these bastards because they weren't sure what to do with the show. First it was on Friday, not Thursday, and so on.
But when you say bastards, you're not referring to me and Jerry.
NBC.
NBC.
Yeah.
I just want to clear that up. Yeah.
No, the bastards with the
Yeah,
football
gotcha.
and the
Yeah,
money.
yeah.
Initially, they didn't give a full commitment to the show until like 3 years in. Did you get an actual?
The first pickup was for 4 shows.
4 shows.
Then the next pickup was for 13.
Right.
The next pickup was for 22.
And that's 3 years in.
Yeah.
So around that time, in the first 13, you say you found this interweaving thing.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that the popularity was. You think it was just the Thursday night, or do you think that the show found that format of mixing these and building them back together? Because it did become one of the things that people seem to love so very much about the show, other than the obvious thing, which would be the characters and how funny it was. But that interweaving became an important component. Am I wrong? Biggest fans in the world of the show?
You are not wrong. That's
right.
one of the
It set it
trademarks of
apart.
the show is
Trademark.
in the last act. Generally, there's going to be some overlap, and it's always amazing.
This is. I never realized that anybody was even paying attention to that stuff. I knew people liked the show,
Right.
but and every now and then somebody would say, "Oh, I like how that's you
Something got tied up."
Yeah, yeah. But it wasn't anything that I thought people gave any thought to. Yeah.
Well, that's the other thing to keep in mind. When you're in it at the CBS Radford, when you're in the pocket,
Yeah.
and the show's going on down on the floor, and you've got this writing, and that train is just moving down the tracks. Clearly, when you get the full 26, how much does it just completely take over?
Yes.
Every waking moment.
Yes.
There's no way out of it once
No.
you get in.
But I think in some respects it was better than a room where people stay. We never stayed there all night.
Right.
We never had any of those things. We didn't do a room. There was no room where the
was you and
writers were
Jerry
with us,
and-
12 writers in a room punching up a script.
12 Angry Men. Usually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We didn't do any of that, so there were no late nights or anything like that. The writers on the show didn't have to go through that.
Right.
And neither did I really.
So, because sitcom world for an actor is arguably the greatest job in show business because of the
For an
hour.
actor.
For an actor.
No question about it.
Right.
The best job in the world.
In the
In the
world.
world. Yes, I've said that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's 22 hours a week tops.
Well, let's take, if there's 22 shows and it's 4 days a week, it's 88 days a year.
Right.
Right?
Yeah. And you do 3 on, 1 off.
Yeah.
Right, for the actors.
Yeah, it's a kick job. It's a great job. Yeah.
I just started up on this Chuck Lorre show,
Yeah.
Mom, with Allison Janney and Anna Faris. And just recently, like a whole new, brand new thing. Like, I don't know how this somehow
Yeah.
was kept from me. The joys of this. I've always
Yeah.
heard. And I did a couple of fabulously failed pilots, but I had not been in the pocket because I kind of walked
Yeah.
in the middle of the
How
first
great
season.
is it?
Oh my
It's unbelievable.
Because Chuck, with all the success of his 4 shows on the air, it's 2 weeks on, 1 week off, 2 weeks on, 1 week off.
Yeah.
How does that?
Right.
And then Thursday, the camera blocking day, the horrible day, done with stand-ins.
Yes, I know. It's
Now,
amazing.
Yeah, so
So yeah, you leave the stage and you walk into your car. You go, "This is the job I came to do. This is unbelievable." Yeah.
but for the writers, it doesn't stop.
For the writers,
There's no
it's-
time
yes,
off.
Right.
Like they just did this Christmas break, and I remember it comes back to work today, and I thought, oh, there's a script here. So
Yeah.
obviously the writers were working during the Christmas
yeah, I worked
break.
over Christmas.
Yeah.